Up next is a very meaningful part of our program tonight, and we'll present our annual SUP Impact Award to remarkable person, Monica Cannon Grant, who's an exceptional Boston activist, my city. She's an activist for justice. In fact, if you read today's paper or looked on the news last night, Monica was leading a powerful demonstration in the city. And she's also a former camper and counselor with the Franklin IO SUP camp. We're also joined by Mo Barbosa, a PBHA board member, senior director of community engagement at Health Resources in Action, and a friend and a legendary youth worker. In addition to Mo, we also have Giselle Bogus, the director of PBHA's Junior Leaders in Community program, the newest SUP initiative, which is a really exciting leadership program for rising ninth graders as they enter high school. Giselle has been a part of the SUP community for more than a decade as a camper, junior counselor, senior counselor with the Roxbury Youth Initiative. Welcome, Monica, Mo, and Giselle. Farah, could you share a little bit about this award?
Yes, absolutely. The SUP Impact Award is given to a community leader or organization in Boston or Cambridge. Work and support have served to champion the communities our SUP families live in. Since our SUP camps launched more than 30 years ago, they have remained deeply ingrained in the communities that they are in. Dorchester, Roxbury, South Boston, Chinatown, the South End, Mission Hill, or right here in Cambridge, the community is what makes our camps what they are. Our SUP Impact awardee, Monica Cannon Grant, has worked tirelessly for the Boston community, and we are so happy and grateful to have her here with us and to honor her tonight. I'm going to pass it on to Giselle now to share a little bit more of Monica's work.
Thanks, Farah. As Charlie mentioned, my name is Giselle, and I'm serving as the director of the Junior Leaders in Community, or JLINK program, for rising ninth graders in Boston. I joined Roxbury Youth Initiative, or RYI, as a camper when I was 10 years old. I later became a junior counselor, a senior counselor, and as a student at UMass Boston, I grew in the SUP community. It has given me a chance to make a difference in my community and give back to the youth. Monica Cannon Grant is an activist and community organizer in Boston who has been living in Roxbury for nearly 20 years. She is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Violence in Boston, whose mission is to improve the quality of life and life outcomes of people from disenfranchised communities by reducing violence and the impact of trauma. As a part of this work, Monica opened social impact centers in Hyde Park last September, which provided housing assistance, food assistance, and more to those in need. She was named one of 2020 Bostonian of the Year by Boston Globe and has worked closely with Senator Elizabeth Warren, Representative Ayanna Pressley. Monica has been lead organizer for several actions for racial justice, including White Supremacy March in Boston in 2017, and organized more than 50,000 people in Boston last summer to protest the murder of George Floyd and others, and at the hands of police across the country. Yesterday, she mobilized the community after the verdict in the trial that was announced. We are honored to have her here with us tonight.
Thank you for sharing that, Giselle, and helping people to really understand the meaning and worth of the efforts that Monica has done. I know a lot of folks will be really impressed by that 50,000 number, but that's the one time. The really important thing is that Monica shows up every time. It's 50,000 times that she has stood up for our communities and for the families and helping these communities to be more just and be more supportive. For this and for many other reasons, on behalf of the Phillips Brooks House Association, I'm honored to present you with the 2021 SUP Impact Award. Congratulations. I wish that we were together so that I could present you the physical award, but I think you have it, right?
Yeah, so it's in my office on my top shelf.
Okay, okay.
But everybody can visit my Facebook because I posted it on every platform I have, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I posted it everywhere. And it's so funny. My sister chimed in. She's like, isn't that the summer program we went to as kids? I'm like, yes, that's the same one. So thank you guys. Truly appreciative.
All right, what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna smile for a photo that our folks are going to take. I think, Nathan, you're gonna let us know when it's been taken. So if you could just cheese into the camera with us, Giselle, Charlie, Farah, Monica, cheese. All right.
You guys look great.
Okay, good, good, good. Thank you for that. We've got a couple questions that we're going to ask you, Monica, just to give us a chance to let folks know a little bit more about you. So I'm going to start off, and then I'll pass it over to Giselle. I'll give you a chance to answer first, of course. Monica, as someone who's participated in Franklin IO SUP program a few years ago, as a camper and as a counselor, you obviously have a unique perspective about the impact that these programs have in uplifting young people. Can you share a little bit about your experience and why you think programs like SUP are so important for young people?
Absolutely. So I'm going to definitely give away my age and say I'm an 80s kid. So I was in SUP in the 90s. And for a lot of us, it saved our lives, just given everything that was happening around us. There were so many. I mean, I went to my first funeral when I was in middle school. One of my friends got shot and killed. And so it was an outlet. It was something for us to do, to have us not hanging in the neighborhood on a regular basis. And the truth is you can either go one or two ways. You know, you can be a product of your environment, or you can do something different. And my mother was determined that she didn't want me or my brother or my sister to be a product of where we were growing up. And I can just remember it was my first time going on a camping trip. I had never left Boston. I had never left the projects. And they were talking about taking us to the woods. And I was like, the woods? Like, are they gonna leave us out there? And so it was definitely eye-opening, but I wanted to go every day. First time ever, I never forget, we did trust exercises once I became employed, and we went in the woods and we're like falling out of trees. And I was like, and I never thought I would be able to do that. And so definitely necessary, definitely a program that has to be around forever. Definitely age myself, because I can remember when I was a part of the program, they allowed the college students to live in a development that they were working in, and they had an apartment on the premises. And so we were able to go to their apartment and have pizza night on Fridays just to hang out with them, because they lived in Franklin Hill with us. And like, we just had the most amazing relationship with them. We could talk to them, we could hang out. They would come check on us, because by that point, they knew where we lived, they knew our parents. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a camper and then working there. It empowers you. It makes you feel like you're responsible for something. And I ended up being the counselor for my younger siblings, which gave me a reason to tell them what to do, and couldn't nobody do nothing about it. So definitely love the experience.
Thank you. Giselle, I'll pass it over to you.
I know exactly how you feel about the camping thing. When I was 10 years old, I was like, I've never been in the woods before. What y'all gonna do with me out here? I was like, I didn't even know people went camping. I thought it was a myth.
Me and you both. I had only seen it on TV. I was like, camping.
But this has been a practically traumatic year for our children and their families. What advice would you give to counselors who are working with campers and teens this summer?
I think two things are important. It's important to validate the feelings of the young people that you're working with, but it's also important to highlight that it's okay to have Black joy, because that's also the resistance. I think that we have so much that we're dealing with. You have the pandemic. We're watching Black and brown people be killed on video, on TV. You have everyday life, just, being in families that are not always healthy, and in households that are not always healthy. And a lot of times, a lot of the young people that went to SUP were escaping something. It was their outlet to get away from something. It was their safe space. And so I would encourage you to definitely hold space if they want to talk. But if they're not at the point where they want to talk about everything that's happening around them, Black joy, moments of joy. I literally don't watch anything negative before I go to sleep. I'll put on like Family Guy or American Dad or something, because being an activist, you can imagine what my email inbox and just text messages look like. Someone's always in trouble. I'm consistently dealing with survivors and victims. And if I'm not dealing with that, somebody's asking me to protest because their child has been stolen from them. And so I have to be intentional about self-care. I do therapy, and that's the other thing. Mental health is extremely important. I go once a week, and we should not be ashamed, because to intake everything that we've been dealing with as a society for the last year, to still be standing is a testimony in itself. So those are the things that I would highlight when dealing with young people, because they're sponges and they internalize so much. I'm a mom of 5 and I'm 5 months pregnant. So if I'm breathing hard, that's why. And my kids range in age from 22 to 2. And so constantly having conversations and pulling them in, checking on them. I called my son yesterday just to tell him I love them. And he's like, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "Nothing's wrong. I just want you to know that I love you." He's 22 years old, but I call him all day, every day, just to make sure he's safe and he's all right, because he's driving and he's outside by himself and I can no longer hold his hand anymore. And I think those are the things that are important.
Yeah, thank you so much, Monica. I just want to shine more light on what you were saying about mental health and therapy. I have a therapist. I think my whole life, I thought that I shouldn't be doing therapy. And then there was just a moment where I was like, this needs to happen. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. And so I just appreciate you for speaking so much truth to that, for speaking truth to Black joy and making the spaces for Black and Brown people to experience joy. And I hope that's something that our camps can give a little bit of. My question is, if you wanted to share with us any closing thoughts about what you would like to ask our audience to do to make our communities stronger. What can we do out here?
I'm gonna be honest, it's so hard to ask people to do things who are already stretched so thin. I think that if you have the capacity to volunteer or support someone, then do so. But it's okay to do nothing too, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and you've made it through the damn pandemic. I think for me, I had to be intentional about boundaries, because, you know, everybody likes to highlight your activism and tell you how amazing you are, but there's a downside. I get between 250 to 300 death threats per week. White supremacists troll me on every platform that I have. Tonight, 7 News posted the article from the protest yesterday. If you read the comments under that article, you will be like, what the hell? You know what I mean? So it has its ups and downs. I would encourage people that if you know someone who is an activist or organizer, check in on them, support them, even offer to walk with them around the park just to, you know, decompress, because it's tough. I've had to uproot and move my family due to safety reasons. I have armed security that I travel with. There's so much that comes along with doing this work. And being labeled a Black extremist and like having the FBI call your cell phone. You're like, how did you get this number? So I would encourage the audience to reach out, check on people who are doing this work. Activists are on the front lines like nurses and doctors at this point, because we feel a necessary need to come outside. Check on your young people. Check on the young people in your household. They definitely have an opinion and feelings about what's happening around them. Create a safe space for them to be able to say to you how they're feeling. It is a lot to watch someone die on live TV. I can only imagine what doctors and nurses go through, because I couldn't watch that every day. I used to work in an emergency room and I quit my job because a baby passed away and I'm a mom and I couldn't take it. And so check on young people, check in with them to see how they're doing, practice self-care. And if you can't do anything but get up in the morning, you've accomplished something, and don't feel bad for it.
So, Monica Cannon Grant, I don't know you, but I want to tell you I love you.
I love you too, Charlie.
And I appreciate you. And a couple of things somebody put in the chat highlighting, well, first of all, the chat's blowing up for you with, you know, all those comments on the Globe article. This is the antidote to that. is in the chat, and somebody put black joy is the resistance, and you
Yeah.
exemplify that. I have a mentor who says the most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example. And I've rarely met anyone who exemplifies that more than you. And
Thank
I'm meeting
you.
you on Zoom. So here's my question. And by the way, I live in Boston. I raised my children in Boston. I've been a youth worker for 40 years. I started in Franklin Hill, but, and so I appreciate you. And you're a big sister, you're a mom. And I want to know what inspires you and what fortifies you.
Whew. I'm inspired by young people, but more specifically my children. I came to violence prevention work wasn't something I chose. I stood next to my son and somebody put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. And in that moment, I decided that I wanted to figure out why. My street had been shot up 20 times in one summer, and my house was a crime scene of a young man being shot on my doorstep. And in that moment, I was angry. Fast forward, I became a youth worker working for Roca at the time. And I had to help the young man who put the gun to my son's head. And it was, my nerves were shot. I was shaken. I was trying to figure out, could I really help him? And in that moment, I realized that his household had just as many disparities as a victim's household, and he needed just as much help and resources and concern. And so I decided that if I ever got my own organization, my population would be shooters, because oftentimes when we're doing this work, we focus a lot on the victims, and rightfully so. But before they were shooters, they were victims. And that's where I get my inspiration from, because a lot of those young men who I was able to help have remained in my life, have stayed out of jail, have become successful. They call and say thank you. And that's what keeps me going, just to be able, if I can say one, then my job is done.
Well, you are turning pain into power on a daily basis in your own life and in many other people's lives. And you've inspired everybody here tonight, and you do that wherever you go. So I love you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you guys do. To be a youth worker 40 years, God bless you. It ain't been that long for me, and I hope I make it to 40 years of doing this work. But I tell you, and I know you'll understand this when I say it, it's not work.
No.
Like, I was doing it out of my kitchen with no check and no money, with an EBT card and a hope and a dream. Housing young men who had got shot, who the hospital were discriminating against and they wouldn't take care of. I've had young men sleeping on air mattresses on my floor to make sure they wouldn't break into buildings because they were homeless. I've broken all the youth worker rules you could possibly imagine to try to save young people. But again, it didn't feel like work. I just felt like somebody had to care. And so I appreciate the work that you guys do, because it shaped me as a teenager. It could have went one or two ways, you know? And I'm blessed to say that me and my other two siblings turned out phenomenal compared to where we grew up and what we've seen and what we experienced.
I love it. Well, we are blessed and humbled to present you with this award tonight. And, you know, going from a camper to an international leader on issues of public health, violence, and empowerment is a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Mo. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Farah. Appreciate you.